I just wanted to say thank you, as always, to Adam. We consider the ATOM Center our sister organization, not only for Blue Flame Ceremony, but for all of the ancient teachings of the masters that the Whirling Rainbow Foundation has been carrying from indigenous elders and wisdom keepers all over the world, including today a little bit more featured to a chapter of my life that some people know about and some people don't. My beautiful teachings of Osho, as I'm a sannyasin of Osho. So these teachings are going to be kind of highlighted a little bit today because we're going to be talking a little bit more about the Eastern view on death. And that title is my favorite title because it is the title of Osho's book, Death, the Greatest Fiction. And if I was to recommend anything, this short book is probably one of the most powerful wake-ups to understanding that death is the ultimate crescendo. It is the most beautiful part of life. And learning how to die in every moment is the preparation for the ultimate crescendo. So we're going to go into that. But before I do, I want to just welcome all of those that are coming into the call on Zoom. We have some people that were recently participating in the second year ever virtual Burning Man, and we were featured on that. So if you've come in from that, we had a great time doing that on the playa. We have a camp on the playa, so if you want to ask us about it, it's still live, and you can visit our playa and all the cool things that we have up there to share with everyone. The second is to affirm what you've heard earlier in the announcements. Two things. Laughter is the best medicine, which when we come to death, which is the greatest fear, the fear of fears is the death of the ego. That laughter is one of the best ways that we can approach our ego. So I'm so glad you guys are doing that. The Osho community does a very deep dive into the laughter meditation with a 21-day meditation that goes from laughing to crying for a week straight for 3 hours a day. Imagine laughing for 3 hours a day. Then the next week is crying for 3 hours a day. And the final week is silence for 3 hours a day. And Salila, I can see her in the audience, has done this many, many times. In fact, I think she probably facilitated it in the ashram. Talk about change your life. So this 21 days we're going to be speaking to when we talk about Death, the Greatest Fiction, as part of a way that we can change behavior and change habits and the way we view everything. Today's topic, Death, the Greatest Fiction, is really about something that the greatest fiction is really all about. You know, life to us is about doing and having purpose and having importance and, are we on our path and all this kind of story. And when we move into that, that's more of the masculine, like what we are achieving, the human doing in the world. And in Eastern tradition, it is much more of the feminine. It's about letting go of all attachments, particularly to our role or our ego or what we think we are. Because in this death process, we actually dissolve that ego. We dissolve all the separateness, which is really what we do in meditation. And Osho has this profound quote that I will read to you about death being the greatest fiction, because really it's this beautiful dissolving into oneness that we all are talking about in every spiritual path. And we get to have it totally in death. And meditation is our practice. And those that are meditators don't have trouble with death. Those that are not meditators are terrified of death, because death is just the same thing as meditation. The dissolving of the ego into the infinite light of oneness. So I'd like to flip that all on its head today for you because, we move in this Western world in great fear of death. And our current world stage is exemplifying that. Everybody's terrified of death. And when we learn the art of conscious dying, in this life, then we can enter that stage of our journey in great, great delight. And I recently had the opportunity, I don't know if I consider myself a death doula or I just got thrown into the deep end of the pool too many times. Dear, dear friends dying in my arms at different places in the world. And being a meditator, I really paid attention to the process and really learned if we only knew what those stages were, we could cooperate with that spiritually and actually have the most profound time of our life. It's very similar to birth in that when we are, going to have a baby, we definitely get educated. And we have a midwife or a doula, and we have doctors and nurses, and we're taking Lamaze classes or, so that we can enter that with consciousness and with the least amount of struggle. But there's very few people anymore that have that information about the death doula process. And it's thanks to hospice that has transformed the Western world to have even a clue about this amazing spiritual opportunity, a quantum leap in consciousness that's available to us at this crescendo. And what I'd like to do in this time that we have, which is so short, is to kind of give you one thing that happened to me just recently while I was in process with my very best friend of 30 years and a sannyasana of Osho, Tarka Leah of Fairbanks, Alaska. And this was a profound week of my life. And what I want to say about this is that during this experience, one of our mutual friends, when she heard the descriptions I was giving her, she said, "Do you know about the Tibetan Buddhism 8 dissolutions of death? Like that they know the exact process?" And I said, I don't think I'm familiar with that. All my experience is learned hands-on. And so I said, I did read a little bit of the Tibetan Book of Living and Dying when I first became a sannyasin because I was very interested, but I don't remember reading anything of that kind. And she said, yeah, this is what it's called. So right as after I got off the phone with her, I began to research that. And I went, wow, everything that I've been doing or learning about is in the Tibetan Buddhists have had for thousands and thousands of years. And I came across a beautiful excerpt online of a place in Australia that I've been many times, in Mullumbimby. There's a beautiful Buddhist center there. And 3 lamas were speaking on this topic to the hospice center. And I go, oh my God, if we could have that in America where these lamas are talking to us about the process and how to move through it. But before we kind of go into that, I'd like to start a little bit of a meditation for our entrance into this topic, but also ask you how many of you have been at the bedside of someone in the dying process. So many of you. Beautiful. Incredible. So you probably have some insight that you'll add into my insight because we all are getting insight into this wonderment. The second I want to ask you is how many of you have witnessed a conscious death? Meaning the person was fully conscious spiritually. And I think I'm maybe the only one that can raise my hand, which is the one I just witnessed. All the other ones that I was part of were not conscious dying. And so I love Tarka to the moon and back as being one of my best friends, traveled with me around the world, drum maker, Blue Flame leader, community drum keeper, many, many things, and started the first massage school in Alaska in the 1980s, first post-secondary certified. But her 40 years as a meditator came to crescendo in this last 10 days we spent together. And for me, all these years, she's called me her teacher, her spiritual teacher. And in this 10 days, she blew my mind. And I learned that she was the wise one after all. And she is 75, and when she crossed, and I thought she is really my elder. And it was incredible to witness. And it's changed my life forever. And many of you know that just about 2 years ago, I had my own near-death experience. And I was fighting hard to stay alive and really angry about what was happening. And when I witnessed her, it melted everything in me to understand that I knew very, very little as a meditator about what dying and being alive is really all about. And it's about this powerful, powerful divine feminine energy of letting go of all attachments that we have to form, to our projects, to our relationships, and being in that effervescent light of what the Easterns call the silent witness, the one that's watching the movie on the stage, but is not the stage, is not the body, is not the mind, is not the emotions. And this has been a profound opening for me that I hope that I can share with you some things that came through this that were new learnings for me as far as how to assist people into the most glorious, glorious transition to take flight. So I'd like to share with you this breath meditation that's a little bit of an extension of stuff that we've done before, but that is very specific to the dying process. And so when we do that, I'm going to play for you her favorite piece. And this piece was played when we were in her dying moments, which is a very, very important time to be as high and as peaceful and as happy and joyful as you can be, because this really determines what happens, is the state you're in those last moments. So it's one of my favorite pieces also, but I'd like to guide you through that and then comment later about this breath. So just get yourself in a really comfortable place. It's so beautiful to see all of my clan in the ATOM Center, and bring all your awareness to your heart. And many of you have done this meditation with me, or this brief breath work of the Ishtaba, the breath of eternal life. It's breathing in so effortlessly that you're almost being breathed by creation. You're not even doing it. So it is from the back of the heart out the front in this effortless softening and opening the heart. And then breathing from the front of the heart as if you could breathe out the back of the heart. The next breath will be from the left side in and out the right side of the heart. And then the right side of the heart in and out the left. The next breath from the bottom, from the core of Mother Earth, all the way up through the center of the heart, out the crown of the head. And the final one from the crown of the head, all the way down the center of the heart, out the feet. Trying that one more time, that full set. Becoming more aware of the subtleties of energy. In Buddhism, they call them the winds, the 10 winds. The subtle breath, as if you're being breathed by something larger than you, beyond your mind, beyond your doing. Back to front, front to back. Left to right and right to left. Bottom to top and top to bottom. You may even notice your heartbeat because you're just paying attention to that very minute subtlety. The space between those beats, between those breaths. That's who you are. Everything else is the coming and going. On this next set, I'd like you to bring your awareness to breathing from your third eye in the same way, from back to front and front to back, subtle. Left to right and right to left. Bottom to top and top to bottom. And do a second set there as well. Noticing the subtleties of the wind, the breath. But you're almost not doing it anymore. It's being done. And we're going to do one more set. And this set is even higher. It's located about an inch above your ears in the thalamus gland, the lungs of the brain that open in the dying process, the 0 point. If you don't know where that is, just an inch above each ear is the access point to both of your thalamus glands. And the eye of that thalamus gland is known as the Eye of Horus. Start the breath with that intention that you will move through the Eye of Horus, from back to front, front to back, left to right and right to left, bottom to top and top to bottom. This subtlety here is where you get breathed across the veil, where there's no I left. Stay in that space. You are that space. Hold your awareness there. And as you continue that breath for another set, I will read you these words that might help you in your awareness. Meditation and death are very similar experiences. In death, your ego disappears. Only your pure being remains. The same happens in meditation too. The disappearance of the ego and the presence of only pure isness, the witness of your being. The similarity is so deep that just as people are afraid of death, they are afraid of meditation. On the other hand, if you're not afraid of meditation, you will not be afraid of death either. Meditation prepares you for death. The experience is the same, the separation between the false and the real. But because of your resistance in death, you become unconscious. You fall into a coma. You cling too much in death. You don't allow it to happen. You close all the doors, all the windows. Your lust for life is at the optimum. The very idea of dying frightens you from the very roots. Almost everyone, except those few people who have become enlightened, die unconsciously. Hence, they don't know what death is. They don't know what's new beginning and the new dawn. Meditation is your exploration. You are searching to know what exactly constitutes you. What is false and what is real? It is a tremendous journey from the false to the real, from the mortal to the immortal, from darkness to light. But when you come to the point of seeing the separation from the mind and the body, and yourself just as a witness, the experience of death is the same. You are not dying. A man who has meditated will die joyfully because he knows there is no death. The death was his clinging to life. Our whole education is only for life. This is only half an education, and the other half, which is far more important, which comes at the crescendo of life, is completely missing from all systems of education that have existed before or are now in existence. Meditation prepares you for the other half. It helps you to know death without dying. And once you have known death without dying, the fear of death will disappear forever. Even when death comes, you will be silently watching it, knowing absolutely that it cannot even make a scratch on your being. It is going to take away your body, your mind, but not you. You belong to the immortal life. So very, very slowly from that space, I like to bring your awareness to bring that energy, that space, and breathe directly down from the crown back to the heart. And with one more set, do that same Ishtaba breath work at the heart again. And when you get ready and finish that set, bring that same awareness back into the room, back into your presence in this current personality that you are in this lifetime. Knowing that that's still who you are. Nothing changes when you open your eyes. You are not letting go of anything but the dream of this life. And as you come back into this room, I encourage you, especially in the times we're living in, to work with this meditation. Because I'm going to explain to you, it's a very specific one in the thalamus that is done at the final moments of life. And one that recently came out that you can also continue this depth of release of attachments while you're still living to the fullest in this life is Osho's new app. It's called the Osho Bardo Meditation. You can find it in the App Store, and it's it's for people that are dying or who would like to consciously die in every moment and live fully. It's a wonderful meditation that we were doing with Tarka in her final weeks. So as you come back into the room with this kind of presence of this eternal luminous energy of the real you, and what Tibetan Buddhism calls the opening of the 10 winds, I'd like to come back to our topic for today when you're ready. And for those of you that may have worked in hospice or witnessed hospice or have been with dying family members, I'm not going to cover some of those items today, although I'm listing them here for you, helping people prepare on the physical plane. There's a wonderful website called It's Okay to Die, or Okay to Die. It's got a wonderful resources for helping the checklist on the physical plane that is really, really helpful, such as getting all your physical affairs in order. And let's not take that lightly, even if we think, oh, it's only about the spiritual. I don't, need to deal with my stuff. Well, you do, because otherwise other people are left with things, and it may stress them to not know what you wanted. So if you can start lightening your load at any time in life, it's always helpful. But also to make a clear will to other people of how you want to be handled, from whether you want to be cremated to power of attorney to what you want with all of your physical things. All these things are important to others to make sure they serve you. And you're going to be in a state where you don't care anymore, and that's fine. But it will matter to them to keep connected to you. It will matter to them to fulfill your legacy, your wishes. So consider that when you are thinking, I'm not going to die, I'm young, I don't need to do this. It's a great thing to do. You'll learn a lot about yourself in doing it. So I've listed for you on this PDF that I am showing you this unfinished business stuff. And it is very important. When I arrived to Tarka, I said, did you do the unfinished business stuff yet? Did you do the will? Did you do this? Because we can't move on to really spiritually getting ready for death if we are still clinging to all the stories of our matter in this life, our family members. The second one, of course, is the emotional one that we have to do, the forgiveness work. And many of you know this. And again, this topic today is so huge, and I'm not going to be covering this part in much detail. But it's very important that we do that work. And some of you have heard of the Hawaiian method of Ho'oponopono, which is such a powerful way of doing forgiveness work. But these clearings are important. I was on my West Coast tour in 2005, and I was exhausted and finally ready to head up the Alcan after the entire West Coast. And I thought, nobody knows me here. I'm at the gas station, pumping gas, and I thought, I'm free, nobody's going to come up to me and ask me to do anything. And a woman stepped through by the pump and said, "Are you White Eagle Medicine Woman?" And I thought, oh no. I was like, no, I'm done. I'm so done. She goes, "I saw you at, Earth Dance in California, and I was so impressed, and I want you to help me. My aunt is dying in the hospital behind this gas station, and I don't know, what the timing is, and, most of her family lives out of country, and could you come up and be with my aunt?" And I was like, oh my God, okay. So I went up there, and I met with Aunt Mary, and she was a beautiful soul. And she was in a coma pretty much at this point, but Aunt Mary talked to me and told me what was going on, and about her body and what she was uncomfortable with, and we resolved that. But she said, I need to resolve with my son, my one son. So I said to her granddaughter, or niece, I said, she needs to resolve with one of her sons. Oh, I know who that is, Okay, and I said, yeah, that needs to happen. And she's going to leave in a week, and she's going to go out in complete style, like she is really going to go out in grace, but this needs to happen. And there's a week left to her cord, and I'll explain that in a little bit. And sure enough, they made sure they flew in, and that got happened, and she left exactly in 1 week from then. I was driving the Alcan, so I couldn't pick up any phone messages until I got home, and she left me this just absolutely glorious message and thanked me for being able to know the timing and the situation. So it is those personal affairs that need to be done, and they really help that person make closure. So they can take those steps into the new beyond and do so with all their spiritual mana. There's another wonderful website for getting people that you know to tell you their life stories in those last months and record them. There's a fantastic series of questions on a website called Story Corpse. It's very, very beautiful. And you could use that as a framework to do that. I did that with Tarka. I recorded all through the last week because she was completely lucid and told us all of these different stories of her life, which many people didn't know about her life, and everyone has loved hearing them. So it's been really beautiful for everyone. But these, again, I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on because these are things you can find in other resources. And I highly suggest that you, as we enter now the art of conscious dying, I'd like you to, first of all, if you have any questions up to this point, great. And secondly, wanting you to know that you can Google any hospice website for the stages of dying from the hospice perspective. They are wonderful resources, and everyone should know this, including you that don't have anybody elderly or anything. You know what's happening with the world stage right now. I'm not going to comment on that today. But, we are seeing an enormous amount of rare deaths happening right now. And at ages that we didn't think people would or were totally healthy. So this is an opportunity for you to do that research. But I'm going to bring in sort of the Tibetan Buddhism perspective, the White Eagle Medicine Woman experience, and hospice kind of all together for you. But I'm only going to have time to key in on a few things, and I just also want to check in on my timing already to see where we are with that, so I can open up more time for you to ask questions. So any questions that you have now before we kind of move into that part of the process?
We have one here, White Eagle.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if nobody else, I'm going to ask questions. Number one, due to the present pandemic, I've been trying to find death charts to correlate to. I'm having a real difficulty finding correlative death charts over the last 10-year periods. And the other thing is, according to the aliens, we're too primitive to understand the nature of death in life. So what is death? 2 questions.
Okay. Well, your first one is, as you know, we're having false statistics on every side of this issue right now. So I think, we all have our particular viewpoint. Mine is that this was, of course, planned and staged for us, but we can use it, whether it was a negative reason why this was staged, we can use it. We can use anything, and that's what, Osho always said to us as sannyasins, use everything to wake up. So it doesn't matter. And the most important thing that I've had to learn through this process is the neutrality of how I have to approach, even if I have a very specific opinion or thought about what's going on right now, to keep in that space of neutrality so that everyone can have their experience the way they need to. What is death? Well, I hope that we're going to answer that today. I would say the death of identification. The death of identification, or the leaving of the identification of the ego. To me, that is death. The actual physicality of death is only one aspect of death, as we know. When I was in my, quote, near death, I actually did die there. I tell everybody, of course I died there. I'm not that person anymore. Of course I died there. And that is really the spiritual path, is to keep dying to the illusion of who we are and this infinite space of consciousness that is our true nature. But if you want to go through the kind of what is left in death of the physical body, that's all part of this Tibetan Buddhism, which is really a beautiful thing. But I'm going to focus today on this little list because there's no way I'm going to cover the 8 dissolutions in totality of how we understand that. But a few things that I would say are these ones where I said Tarka and what she taught me this round, this experience. The choice to live or die is a very important choice. Not everybody has it, I've learned. We think we have that choice to live or die. And then you have people like my mother, who was trying to commit suicide most of my childhood, and did everything to try to take herself out and live to 89. COVID didn't kill my mother. Nothing would kill my mother. So, if you're not supposed to go, you're not going. And if you're supposed to go, you're going, despite what the outside circumstances are. But in this case, when people have developed enough spiritual mana, they're not enlightened per se, but they are spiritual masters of some kind, they do have a choice. And I saw that with Tarka. I got there and I said to her, "You're not dying. There's no tunnel. There's nothing. Like, what's going on with you?" It's because she wasn't ready and she had not prepared. And then once she made the choice, the tunnel opened the same moment she made the choice. So that was powerful for me to see. This idea of being ready, willing, and able. So the grandmothers came to speak to her because she wanted a session with the grandmothers. So they said, you're ready and you're willing, but you're not yet able. And what does able mean? It means you have to let go of your attachments. She had a lot. She had books that were just about to be ready to be, published. She had many projects unfinished that she didn't want to leave. And she had so much creativity. Some of you may know her. She was the most creative person I've ever met. And just oozing constantly. She was 75, but she was 50. No, never looked over 50. So had more energy than all of us combined. And they said, not only do you have to let go of your attachments to your projects and all your identities of those personas, the healer, the massage therapist, the drum maker, the whatever, but you also have to release the people, because she served thousands of people and they also had to release her. So we made an announcement that we were going to do 21 days of this Osho Bardo meditation, not so much for Tarka, but for the people to let go of Tarka, because she was being held. So that's a very important, and I did this when my first really big tragic story happened with a 31-year-old staff member of ours on the Australia tour, got bitten by a brown snake and tragically went into a coma in a sweat lodge. And died 13 days later. And that was the rip through my life that got me on this path of awakening through death. And I was holding her cord. I was not letting her die. There was just no way. And another healer came from Australia that I called up because I was really in a desperate place, because I couldn't really do my work because I was way too identified. So I brought her in and I said, Kalina, can you help me? I'm not able to do the work with Amrala that I should, as her doula. And she said, you're holding on to her. You have to do this work. She's staying because of you, because she adores you. She was my apprentice. She loved me. She'd do anything for me. So that was powerful. So the ready, willing, and able. These other steps that are below here are really steps of the dying process. So I would like to just, again, take a breath, pause there. And if there's anything that comes up for you there. And then I'm only going to be able to focus probably today on a few of these actual things that are going to be happening to pay attention for. And anybody who's on Zoom can unmute themselves also if they have a question. And you don't have to worry about interrupting me. I love this topic and I love to help us because we're so uneducated in the West. And especially now, we're letting people die alone. It's just this horror story that we are in. People died at home for thousands of years. Died with their loved ones. We're also kept after the physical last breath and the heart stopped beating. We are not dead yet. There is still 4 more etheric phases, and we're wheeling people off for cremation, and we need to know what the process is. Okay, so the first of the dissolutions in Buddhism, and this is very powerful, and I'm just going to summarize it for you, is that the Buddhists believe that there's 8 stages of how you dissolve into oneness. And the first 4 are the elements. So the first cycle, or the first dissolution, is the earth element, okay? Our first chakra and the body. And we already know this, the people get a loss of appetite. You see this in red here on the PDF, and that means it's a hospice thing. Whenever I put it in red, it's like, this is what hospice already tells you. They're going to lose their appetite. They're not going to want to eat anymore. Of course, they're going to become frail and, all the things that we know about that. But what we don't know is the internal sign, because that is where Buddhism comes in. Like, what's happening on the internal plane, not like the body collapsing. We kind of know that, and one of the great spiritual shamans of our time who developed the wave, Gabriel Roth, wrote in her book, Maps to Ecstasy, she wrote, the difference between life and death is movement. It's like, okay, we all get that. The dying body isn't moving. So this external sign of the earth element collapsing is something we know is happening. People feel fatigue and weak and powerless all during this time, drowsiness. You see all of this. This beautiful chart is actually from Tibetan Buddhism. I'm just adding a few things into it. And the one thing that signals the advanced stages of the dying process, meaning the final week, okay? And again, nothing happens perfectly and everything happens perfectly. We all know that. Like, we can look at the script and go like, oh, so you still have a few more days. Like, it doesn't happen like that for everyone, right? Some people die in a tragic accident. Other people are, fall out of a tree and hit their head. Like, not everything happens the way we'd like it to happen. And they do speak to all of that. But, again, this is like getting down many rabbit holes. But here, if the person is, in a hospice situation and we do know they're dying and they're on respiration or they're conscious for part of that time. With Tarkish, we knew that eventually her kidneys, because she was refusing dialysis, would collapse and there would be a process to that. So we had time to sort of say, okay, these are things that are going to happen and this is how you can cooperate with that. And this one was the one I'd like to give you today, if I don't have time for a whole lot, is this first one, the releasing of the earth cord. We have an umbilical cord to our mother when we're born, and then when that's cut, we grow that one to the earth. And this is what we utilize in our blue flame, is this beautiful 9-pointed star, the earth star that we lay on the ground when we start our ceremony. That's how we're connected to the earth. About 18 inches below our feet. That cord has to come out for us to die. And that's why I knew where Aunt Mary was in her process. Because from that point, it's probably the only thing that I have seen that's consistent, is that when that cord comes out, a person has 3 to 7 days. That cord is an energetic thing, so you have to be an energy worker to be sensitive to it. And of course, it's coming out the navel. It's our life cord. It's our umbilicus. And how we often know that that is a problem is because people have terrible distension in their stomach. Because they can't digest anymore. They lost their appetite, or in Tarka's case, she didn't lose her appetite at all. And she was eating way too much because her body was collapsing and couldn't process it. So she was having terrible distension in her stomach. And that's because the life cord was in the way of the process. And that life cord, for some people, is very big. Others people is very thin. And you will see it, or you will feel it energetically if you put your hands. If you do Reiki or any kind of energy healing, you'll pick it up. And what you're trying to do is gently, very, very gently, as if you're not doing it at all, keep your hands on that area. And let the energy from your hands assist them. Don't try to pull that cord. It's none of your business to pull the cord. It's there to give them permission to release the cord. They won't necessarily be present. You are asking that permission. You are holding your hands on that area and just waiting. And you will see it. It will pop. And all of a sudden you'll just feel a sense of release. Some people actually see it going up, like going up into a tunnel. And we know the cord has come out of the earth and then gone to its ascension point. The other technique here that's really helpful is this. The body's about to shed, the luminous body is about to shed the physical body, or the mind is shedding the body in the first stage. And then we drop the mind after that. So it's very air energy, the luminous body. It's ghost-like in nature. So it is trying to slough the physical body. And that's why people get very uncomfortable in this period. And in hospice, there's 2 drugs they call the miracle drugs. I don't know if there's any miracle in it, but and that's morphine and Ativan, to relax people's nervous system because they're feeling that tension. It's like an itchiness on the body. Everything is kind of feeling agitated because there's a sloughing that has to go on. And in midwifing that, you can take your hands, and this is what I call the skin, the shedding of the skin release technique. This was just taught to me by the grandmothers. To take the hands on the body very softly. I'm going to do it as if it's exaggerated. From the top of the head down. But I'm not doing it like that. My hands are almost not moving. They're so subtle. And what I'm trying to do is help the body to slough off of the spirit. That's where all of the tension and fear come in. It's this kind of part of me don't know what I'm going to be without this body. So the body is a bit terrified of dying. Not the spirit, but we have to kind of comfort the body. And in the death process, in all of these stages, we're just looking at stage 1, is that in each stage, there are signs to let us know this is happening. And even when people are totally in a coma, you don't think they hear you, they do hear you. Because they have the ability to bilocate very early in that game. So if you're out of the room and saying, yeah, I think this is going on, blah, 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 they're hearing you. And the best way to stay with a dying person is in silence. The more time you can spend in meditation with that person and the less time talking, the more prepared they will be, the more spiritually ready. And whatever you are saying is soft and sweet and loving and affirming, nothing that creates tension in any way. And just in that silence, to allow yourself to pay attention to what's going on the inner planes. So this technique of releasing the skin and letting the skin shed is very, very powerful in the first and second cycles. This first cycle, of course, is earth. It's root chakra. Okay, take a breath. Okay, and I may have to end there because we did a lot already. And I want to say that if we move from the chakra system to the second stage and the second element, what would that be? Somebody should know what that is. Because I know that the first chakra is my root. So first I got to pull the root up.
So emotions?
Second cycle
Is air?
Is water.
Air, water, okay.
Second chakra. And this is, when people in hospice are called the saliva, the sweat, the urine, the blood dry up, kidney failure, water retention, the skin becoming very mottled is a real sign of the final stages. And this is, if we're conscious, yes, forgiveness work comes into that mix as well, how we neutralize all of our relationships and clearing our identity from this life. In Buddhism, they'd say, if somebody dies from suicide, it's a really poor because they're in that really deeply depressed state, that low frequency state when they die, which means they will reincarnate in a very low frequency. They will not have any chance to go on to a higher ground because they weren't conscious. They weren't conscious. So, and I'm not taking a particular viewpoint here with Buddhism. I have my own experience, which is what I go on most with my direct transmission from the grandmothers and my own witnessing of the process. So look at this right-hand side, and you will have access to this handout. If you email me, it's a beautiful PDF that I kind of put together from several things. But you see on the right bottom that amidst this decompression going on and the dissolving of your physicality, which can be very difficult. Imagine Tarka, who was a 40-year massage therapist who took care of her body impeccably, dying of bone marrow cancer, and a cascade happening so fast. She had never been in the hospital in her whole life. She had never had her body not work. So imagine what this was like in 5 weeks to do it all and say, I'm conscious. And how much in the beginning she didn't understand. She was even like trying to get them to get her better foods. And I was like, honey, you're dying. It doesn't really matter. It's like, it was just, she had trained that way. So it was this really moving out of the identity of all of our emotional attachments. But here in the far right, you see what the Buddhists say, that you'll see a smoke-like vision, which signals the next stage, actually, which is fire, the dissolution of fire. So each of these have visions that people will have that, if we're tracking with them, we can say, what's been happening. Some will even have hallucinations of grandeur or persecution, like somebody's dying in a fire, they're burning, everything's burning, and you think this person's wacky. They're actually going through the internal process. So this is, I could go on and on, but this is the few things I wanted to make sure that you had was this idea of being in a space where you can get all of the physical clearings out of the way and do the emotional clearings and get them out of the way so that you can actually do the spiritual steps and know the process and go consciously. Tarka was lucid until 6 hours beforehand. And when we came in the final morning, she was already in the throes of the final breathing, which is the last physical stage, air. So we have water here. And what did we say was the next one?
Fire. Right?
Fire. And this is where the Cheyne-Stokes breathing usually begins as we enter the final air element, which is going to be the stopping of breathing, right? The gasping, the coughing, the Cheyne-Stokes is known in hospice very well. It's the stage where the person's breathing more on the exhalation than the inhalation, and then there's a gap. So they breathe, and then nothing. And you think, oh my God, it's it. And then 30 seconds later, they start breathing again. That's called Cheyne-Stokes breathing. And just like contractions in birth, they reverse themselves in death, meaning the gaps get bigger. The space between gets bigger. And this is the crescendo now. We're coming to the crescendo of the physical dissolution. And this was going to be very specific for Tarka because she would have kidney failure, and of course her lungs were going to fill up. And that's pretty scary. You're going to drown in your own fluid, right? Scary business for all of us. The grandmothers told her to bring her awareness to the thalamus gland, which I guided you to. These are known as the lungs in the brain. To stop breathing from the lungs. And to bring, because that Cheyne-Stokes is uncomfortable, because then they gasp and they feel scared, is to bring the awareness higher up, out of the lungs, to the thalamus. And at first it feels like, how can you breathe from your thalamus? You don't have to, you just bring your awareness there. And the grandmothers talked about these spirit beings they called breatharians that are literally going to breathe you across the veil. Like, I'm going to pull you across through your crown. And they said you'll feel a sensation of like somebody touching your hair like this on your crown. When you'd have your eyes closed, you'd go, what's that? And that is the breathing that's being done for you. The Osho Bardo meditation has that line in it. It's so beautiful. Don't breathe. You're being breathed. Well, that is what the grandmother said happens in that Cheyne-Stokes, is you're being breathed across. On the physical, it looks scary. A person has a huge gap before they breathe again. And Tarka was utterly prepared. I walked in that room that morning, and she was gasping and partly unconscious, but I could see that she heard me, grabbed her hands, and said, we've waited for this. This is it, baby. We're doing it, And was able to help her stay in the space between the breaths. You are that space. You are not the in and out breath. That's just this existence of many. You are that. Drop everything else for that. And I think that I had the picture on Facebook, but I probably take me a minute to grab it now, of her hand and my hand in her hand. And this is the way her hand was when she died. Effortless. Not a twitch. The gap came. They were getting longer. 4 happened. The 5th one, I took this beautiful tuning fork, 741, solfeggio. I did it on her 3rd eye. I did it on her crown. And on that breath, she was out. Not even a flinch. That is, of course, the final dissolution of the elements, but it is not the final dissolution of the mind, which are the 4 other stages. And again, we're probably way over time. And this could be a huge course because there's so much detail in it. But you can see that for every stage that hospice has, Buddhism here in the fire element, a spark-like vision, shimmering red sparks and fireflies. You know, they have these, what people start seeing and experiencing. And they also talk about the 4 different lights that come. So, you know, a few times when I died, because I've had like 5 in my life, I saw black. And I was like, shit, I'm going to hell, you know? I was like, where's the white light? I was terrified. I was like, shit, I thought I was a good person, you know? So I was like freaking out, including this last time. And it's actually the last stage of higher adepts is black. Everything goes black. And I was like, well, that's what was happening to me. And I was freaking out about it. So it was like so incredible with all the knowledge that he did have and all the knowledge that he still don't have from Buddhism. There was so much of a map of consciousness and how to hold that awareness until everything dissolves. And of course, the Tibetans call that the 49 days after you physically die. You are in an in-between state, either going to reincarnate or not. And that's like such a deep study of that work. But I just wanted you to know that these stages are there. And the big stages of final is this modeling of the skin and the Cheyne-Stokes breathing. These are very, very clear signs that it's within days, if not hours. And for another time, we'll go into the other 4, the mind of white, the mind of red, all the stages and what they're about in Tibetan Buddhism. And these 2 luminous channels of Ida and Pingala, the 2 currents that go the central channel of the spine and how they collapse back down into the heart. It's a beautiful procession. But when we wanted to pull Tarka out after she had physically died, and her sister was calling the cremation people, we were lucky because it was 4 hours. And I knew that something wasn't right because she was still warm for so long. And that is a sign that the person is not through the other stages yet. So if there's warmth around the body or at the heart, you don't go pulling that body out yet. When the body goes cold completely or it smells, then the person has left it. It's a shell, and we know that. We know when that shell is empty. But Buddhists, they don't move that body. That's why you were waked in your home, so that process could go its total distance. And I just have to say to you, it's such a glorious, the greatest fiction was my ending and beginning to this story, because when that happened, it was so effortless. It was so sweet. And all what I was raised about death and fear and all the programming I have in my cells was gone in that one moment that she did this exquisitely. This should be the easiest thing we ever do. This is the patriarchal world that we live in, that the masculine, it's hard, it's hard, it's hard. Life is hard. Being born in this dimension is hard. But death, effortless. Nothingness. And to see that, we had every hospice person come into that room and go, what's happening in here? We want to be in here. And at the moment of death, they came back in because I wanted to check that she was actually gone because there was so much energy there. And they said, yeah, her heart stopped. But I was like, but she's still here. Yeah, yeah. They said all of the other people in the hospice space that we were in, and this was in Florida, all died right after her. She took them all with her. She just, all right, everybody, it's a party, come on. And she just completely grabbed all of them. And they all came in, even the cremation guy didn't want to take the body. He just came in there and goes, what's going on? This is incredible. Can I participate? And so I do the anointing of the body and the final songs. But she was magnificent. It was so beyond anything I've ever experienced. And did I put it on here? It's not coming. So where are we, Dawn? I know we're probably over time.
Well, we probably should start winding up. We can allow like maybe 10 minutes for a few questions, but it's been so fascinating and, amazing. It is really a whole workshop or a week of.
Oh my God, I could go on and on. I just want to leave it with my beautiful sister because I'm on my knees in awe that, she was frightened for a few days like anybody would be. Not majorly. She wasn't emotional about it. She's just uncomfortable. And I said, I got back to my room that night and I thought, oh, she'll give me something from her. She bought this book. She was reading it. And I found the quote that I read to you today about death and meditation. And I said to her, you're a 40-year meditator. You know what it's like to let go in oneness and drop the ego. I mean, you're just going to get to stay there now. And she was like, oh, right. So it really shifted it for her very quickly. But she was very good at, she was an NLP professional. So anchoring to words was very important. And so I say that to you, your words, what you say to that person, they're clinging on to every word you say because it's a big, big moment and everything is meaningful to them at that time. So I'd like to read what she actually, I had recorded one of her stories, and I'd like to read this to you as her final words to you, all of you, as a conscious being. I feel so much joy. This was 2 days before death. I feel so much joy, privilege, and celebration. I feel a wave coming upon the shore, and that at this time the wave is at one of the greatest peaks, and so many are transitioning their bodies. It's like the 100th monkey. As that number reaches a certain number of those that have transcended consciously, the awakening of those that came indeed to make use of Gaia as this spiritual liftoff to greater creations, that indeed will not only manifest, but be sustained for the next generation of seekers and inquirers. So from every direction, I feel the breath, including the very heart of the consciousness we call planet Earth. With every breath of every living being, every rock, I feel the connectedness, weaving a new tale and new levels of expression into the luminous evolution, and the privilege of being embodied at this time and being part of that bridging from this body to the next, and how I most clearly can clarify by letting go of my stories and enjoying the ride, enjoying this season of a world holding hands. And I mean all life holding hands in this symphony. Here's Tarka's, the orchestration. The beauty of the songs, the beauty of touching the heavens with the with the angels. Going past appearances and relaxing, relaxing, relaxing. My deep gratitude. I depart from here because this is where words don't follow me into this expression, except just gratitude, and that is enough.